Welcome back to the Links Golf Podcast. I'm Al Lunsford, digital editor for Links. We've got a great conversation for you guys today. Michael Keiser Jr. joins us, co-owner of Sand Valley in Wisconsin, owner at Rodeo Dunes in Colorado, Wild Spring Dunes coming up in Texas, Old Shores in Florida. Some exciting public golf projects across the country. Michael breaks the whole spectrum down for us, and we really dig into Sand Valley as Joe and I both took trips there recently to see the new Commons course, the 12-hole golf offering from Jimmy Craig that will be the next to open there. It is a dynamic addition to the fold there at Sand Valley. They've just been exploding, and that's going to continue. No signs of slowing down there. So we talked everything Sand Valley, and broke down what else is next to come. But before we get into that, wanted to give you a word from our sponsor, Tourism Ireland, this season. We thank them for being our sponsor. Of course, you can go to Ireland and play places on the island like Ballybunion, Royal County Down, those classic legendary links. We at Links Magazine have covered Ireland plenty, as you guys probably know, in print, on digital. Would point you maybe to one of our articles on the website about the modern courses of Ireland, places like Waterville, Carn, St. Patrick's Links at Rosapinna that just opened a few years ago, and Adair Manor, which will host the 2027 Ryder Cup. That property just turned 30. It's hard to believe it's so young and opened in 1995. But if you're planning your next trip, looking for a place to go, Ireland's breathtaking landscapes, great food and drink, the legendary crack and welcoming atmosphere at every single course. Your perfect golf getaway is waiting for you. So visit Ireland.com/golf and start planning that dream golf trip to the Emerald Isle today. Don't wait, because the tee times will get gobbled up. As we all know, golf is as popular as ever. So Ireland.com/golf. Our folks at Tourism Ireland will have you covered. We'll take care of you. Now, hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Michael Keiser Jr. Thanks for listening. We are glad to be joined on this episode of the Links Golf Podcast by Michael Keiser Jr., the co-owner of Sand Valley, developer slash owner at Rodeo Dunes, Wild Spring Dunes, Old Shores. These are properties you may have heard of at this point. You may not have heard of because they're in development and going to be part of the golf resort equation, something to think about as you're trying to figure out where to travel next. These are some names that are going to be big in the news if you haven't already heard them. But Michael is here to give us what to know about all of these places today as best as he can. Thank you, Michael, for joining us again. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you both, Al and Joe, and thanks for having me on your show.
So you are now back at Sand Valley. Joe and I both visited recently and just missed you, but we were there at Sand Valley to look at the Commons, the new 12-hole course from Jim Craig, which was delightful. And we're going to get into that first before we roll into that. For someone who's not familiar with Dream Golf, this idea and collection of golf destinations, can you just sort of give us the brief what it is and what you yourself do? Even though I introduced you with that, but what's
I
your
think,
role?
yeah, well, Dream Golf was a name we introduced recently just to describe a collection of golf resorts that, one or more of us in the family have developed or own, right? So it's a blanket name for a collection of golf resorts that have a lot in common. Each of them have a unique identity and a strong sense of place. But at all of them, golf comes first, second, and third. So that's what they share.
Yeah, sharing a similar ethos. We didn't mention Bandon Dunes, of course. Michael's father, responsible for founding that place, and anyone who's gone to any of these places, you can sense that similarity in how they're structured. The people that work there, everyone sort of shares the same core values, and it's all built around that golf as it was meant to be mentality. It's just a pleasant experience overall, because everyone puts golf at the top of the equation, but understands the respect that you have for the game and what you're sort of anticipating when you go to experience a golf destination like any of these. It's second to none, and you really feel a sense of place there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's a strong sense of the geographic and geological place that exists. The pieces of ground that we've been lucky enough to develop are all very different from one another. But also, there's a unique culture and group of people at each of those places. So when we think of Dream Golf, we're not trying to create a brand where we impose this Dream Golf hospitality on a group of people. We find local stars who are local, born and raised in Bandon or Sand Valley, or have moved here, and we let them shine. So even though they all have a slightly different hospitality twist, we just have incredible people at each of the resorts who share their stories. And I know you guys have met a lot of them, and we encourage them to get to know our guests and to share their stories and their passion. So it's local in its geography and geology, and just as important, the incredible people that we get to know and get to collaborate with at each site.
Yeah. Joe, I know you were just there. Like it felt like everyone at those different touch points is not just someone you're passing by. You feel a connection and get to know a little bit about each person that you meet, from the, shuttle drivers to the front desk or anyone on the golf staff. Tell us, Joe, what your itinerary was recently at Sand Valley, and that will help us get into this conversation about the Commons.
Yeah, pretty quick visit, but one that I was very excited about. Maybe a little bit overdue, um, because I followed Sand Valley, so closely when things got rocking and rolling 10 years ago. And what I did was got in and played Sedge Valley the first morning, then played the Commons. It's not open yet, but also I went around with Brandon Carter, the 12-hole golf course. And then the following morning, yesterday morning, played the Lido. And then did the drive back I flew out of Milwaukee and then flew home. And so, Michael, yeah, I mean, to echo the conversation you were just having about dealing with different people and the touch points at the resort, I have to echo that. I'm not just waving, the Kaiser flag. It was true with everybody I dealt with at the different pro shops, at the restaurants, at the front desk. It's just remarkable how each was especially helpful in your own way. Sometimes you go to a place and you just don't have that encounter. You deal with the person and it went fine. It went smooth. This was something that I actually noted that, wow, they went a little bit above and beyond, both with the personality and the fact that they helped me out with things. So had to start with that. And then, of course, that goes for the caddies as well. And so, yeah, I mean, when you started the way you did with Sand Valley, the Coeur Crenshaw course, and then Tom Doak, I'm sorry, you had David McClay Kidd do Mammoth Dunes, and then Jim Craig with Coeur Crenshaw do the Sandbox course, which proved so popular. Now, that's 2018. We know what happened to life and society 2 years later, but were you already envisioning Sedge Valley? And then when did the Lido come onto your radar? And then the Commons. I mean, how long did it take to gestate, so to speak?
I'm so bad at going back in time. I could explain the order, but I can't.
Sure.
And some of the dates I could assign. But before Lido, I was focused on the what is now Sedge Valley, and my passion for that piece of land started when we first began working with Bill Core. At that time, my dad was still involved in the resort before he stepped aside. At that time, he was the final decision maker. So I had tried to get more of that sedge property included in the first course. That's not the direction we ultimately went in, and things turned out so well with that first course. But I've always been smitten with the land that is now sedge. And in order to present it to Bill and my dad, I cleared it of the pine trees way back in 2014. Actually, the first green of sedge was that first acre of land that we cleared. And I
Mm,
remember because I'd spent at that point over a year walking in the woods, and I came out to see the clearing, and there was this cacophony of birds at sunset. And it was
mm,
extraordinary how quickly removing the trees brings the bugs, the birds follow. So, in a way, Sedge began at the very beginning in 2014. Seeing the success of the sandbox and how well it was received, I'm like all of our ideas, I'm sure I stole this from somewhere else in the UK and Ireland. But I thought that if that was popular, we should think about a course of par threes and drivable par fours. And when we were when Bill routed the 12th and 13th holes at Sand Valley, it cut that property I love so much off. And when we had begun to look at routings for sedge, it just felt like we were forcing 18 holes into this piece of ground. So I'd sort of let that go. So I reached out to Tom and I said, look, Tom, I have this idea. I want to build a shorter course, a precision course. Um, here's the topo. Would you think about it? And he responded, he said, Michael, I love it. I'd love to do that. That sounds like a great idea. Um, but there's another thing I've always wanted to do, which is to build a 6,000 yard course. I think it would fit this property like a glove. And in fact, here's the routing. Would you consider this? And I went out and walked it. You could walk it because the trees were cleared, and I was blown away by the quality of the holes. They brought so much more out of the land than my precision course, which we've now executed in the form of the commons, than my precision course would have. So I sent him a pretty good idea, and like he always does, he ran with it and made it an excellent idea. So that's how Sedge came about. So we're moving forward with trying to develop that, and the funding relied on a second TIF grant from the town, right? And we were moving in that direction. And I had begun and this is where I don't know the exact timing, but I'd sort of reintroduced myself to the Lido and was going down rabbit holes online, finding all these things online that in the past Jim Urbina had shared with me and my dad. And found that there was a lot more out there. So I'd begun thinking about the Lido and had made the decision to move forward with it. But in my mind, it was going to come after Sedge. Then the I don't know if it was COVID or for whatever reason the town pulled their funding. So Sedge was dead, or at least drastically postponed. And COVID came. I was living up here with my newborn son and my wife. Tommy's now 7. And I just said, let's do this Lido thing. It is a different model, and we could raise money through memberships. On the 1,000 acre conservancy, there's 17 homesteads. So I just dove into that and built the Lido first. I was introduced to Peter Flory, as we begun that, who had, I think we all know Peter's story by now, but he had rebuilt the Lido digitally with extraordinary precision, and he was able to give Tom Doak confidence that this could be done well. So that's how it all came together. We're marching forward with it, but we didn't have Peter yet. We didn't have Tom. And once Peter came, into the equation, it allowed the project to be done right with Tom and then Brian Schneider. The success of the Lido created funds to allow us to then go build Sedge. So that's my best crack at it. It's convoluted.
I mean, it's remarkable, basically a decade, how much it's changed. Even I was there like 5 years ago, right around that 2018, 2019 mark, where you just have the 218s and the sandbox, and going back a few weeks ago, I'm just kind of blown away at I'm trying to reorient myself to this property that I thought I was familiar with, and still some of the same stuff was there, but in a lot of ways it has changed. And you talked a lot about the different destinations having unique identities. It's wild how each individual course at Sand Valley now has such a distinct identity that's different from every other course that's there. Um, you talked about Sedge being in the cards for a while. I had sort of forgotten that was, people were talking about it, and waiting for it to happen. Meanwhile, the Lido happens, and so on. But Sedge in general may have been my favorite little round that I had, and a similar itinerary as Joe. Um, the from the different half par holes, that serene corner at like the fifth and sixth hole, the par three, and then short par four right there, all the way down to the $1 hand pies that you get, the little turn house out there. It's just, it itself is such a unique experience. A par 68 that does not at all feel like anything has been diminished or shortened in any way. Uh, and so many different ways to play it. Do you think it turned out? I know it wasn't that precision course like you were talking about, and that's sort of what the Commons is going to be. But how did you think it turned out from vision to reality?
I think it turned out wonderfully. I mean, going back to the point you started with, that it's certainly something that we learned from our dad, and where he set the bar so high is creating a resort with such different golf courses that are each, very good. Every time you add a course, it gets harder and harder to do, right?
Yeah.
Um, so SAD certainly has such a distinct identity, not just in the par, but that we'd cut those trees down in 2014. So for 10 years, through prairie burns, that native vegetation has been restored. And I think it has that element of beauty. Sand Valley and Mammoth have so much sand. And I think Sedge plays through this great heathy savanna. So that turned out great. I think the way Sedge plays is so fun. I think the greens on it are so interesting. We dialed them up a little bit, but I think they're very, playable and fair. And, I like it because it's wide and you could get it near the greens and you could go make bogeys out there. To make pars, you have to be precise. And so it's a course that allows everybody to be in the hole and be in the match. And if you're like me and get a lot of strokes, you could do pretty well out there as long as you don't try to bite off, as long as you're realistic with how lousy you are. Um, so that's fun. And yeah, it turned out far better than I could imagine. And that piece of ground you described really says it all. Starting with five, we have a short par three that plays a lot like 12 at Augusta,
Mm-hmm.
a 295-yard par four, 165-yard par three, and a 240-yard par three. That's an insane scorecard. But those were just the best holes on that piece of ground. And had we had a more traditional length and par, we couldn't have squeezed that out of that ground. And it's some of the most interesting, ground. And it's such a cool corner. So, I believed in it when Tom started, but like every time he builds a golf course, it always seems to end up better than I could have imagined. So I'm delighted. It's really fun. It's really fun to play.
Go ahead,
Well,
Joe.
I'll go then. And I remember writing 10, 12 years ago that for the second course, at Sand Valley, um, your dad was kind of in the picture, and you had a bake-off in terms of the architects. It's a fun concept, at least intriguing to architecture fans. And I don't have to name the three names that were the finalists, although I have that. But you've worked with so many talented architects, including architects that are part of teams that
Yeah.
have then been able to go on their own.
Yeah.
Um, and they keep delivering, one after the other gets best new course, best new this, and exciting aspects of it. And so, how did it come to pass that this next golf course that's going to open in the fall or in 2026, that Al and I had a chance to play the Commons, you went to Jim Craig or
Uh,
Jimmy, as
yeah.
he's better known?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, I'm trying to go back and remember how the conversation about the golf course started, but my relationship with Jim started when we built Sand Valley. I figured at that time, I was on every walk with my dad with Bill, but I thought maybe where I could influence the course more was getting to know all of his shapers. And I lived up here. I know I'm gonna miss somebody, but Dave Axlin started running the site. Jimmy Craig was here. Tony Russell was here. Dan Proctor came through. Ryan Farrow he had been an architect for a while, started his work with Bill on this project. So there were a lot of them, and I tried to. I know I'm sure I'm forgetting a very talented architect, but so that's how I got to know Jimmy, and he ended up taking over the construction or sort of the lead of the project for Bill halfway through. So I got to know him there. He and I sort of snuck the sandbox in. I had money from the town left over. Uh, it, I proposed a part two course, which again, like the conversation with Bill, he said, "Yeah, this is great," and then talked me into my senses by offering an even better solution for that piece of ground. And then we presented it at the time to my dad and Bill, and my dad liked the idea, and then Bill loved it so much that he and Ben, really, really got, sort of took it over. And then by building the sandbox, the relationship and the trust was solidified. Um, so not sure. I'm trying to remember how, I'd always still wanted to do the precision course, and the ground was completely flat and void of any interesting features. It had sand, and that's about it. And that reminded me a lot of the sandbox, right? Pretty flat, beautiful vegetation. But those greens, believe it or not, were, manufactured. We hauled in a lot of sand, and Jimmy shaped them and tied them in so beautifully. So I think Jimmy, you always try to pair the site with the vision of the course with the architect. And where Jimmy excels is with sort of like a blank slate, right? We've seen that again at MacArthur, that gem that they built in Florida, which was just a flat, sandy site. So I knew that about Jim. So I'm sure that's why I reached out to him. I said, we got to create this golf course. We were building this 40-acre lake, and we had all these spoils, and we had to put them somewhere. So we just sort of randomly dumped them around the site. And then, he would come up with the routing, and he and I would walk it, and we'd tweak it every walk and say, well, why don't we go there? We'd shape greens that were ultimately abandoned. You'll find some old greens sitting in the fairways. Our version of the 13th at Augusta is in the second landing area of the first fairway, for example. So we just had a lot of fun riffing off of these dumps of sand that blew around. And we intended, it's a short course, to shape it and build it in 1 year. And we ended up taking 2.5 years to build it, in part just because it was so fun, just refining it and letting the routing evolve.
Well, again, it's something that folks will be able to experience next year at some point. But, you know, I had written a preview about it. And again, we're talking about the Commons. Um, and I was pleasantly amazed at the quality of the golf holes. I was expecting just sort of again, you talk about flat land and you talk about um, maybe not as many natural attributes as some of the other courses that Sand Valley had, and yet there's certainly a fistful of holes out there that could fit in any golf course, whether it's Sand Valley or anywhere else, that you're like, wow, this is terrific. So you didn't dumb it down just as a 9 hole or 12 hole or something. You're like, this is a legitimate option,
Yeah.
whatever your itinerary is at Sand Valley. But hey, maybe you don't want another full 18 in your afternoon round, or when you come onto the property the first day, or a getaway round or something. Um, did that evolve and you adapted and said, we actually can do more. We can do what we want with this.
Yeah, it started as a 9 hole golf course. I really believed in his ability to shape. I believe in I call that the Scottish scale of golf. I mean, that scale would really fit in, in a lot of great Scottish links course, which is sort of my favorite scale. These big sweeping courses are fun and exciting, and I love Irish dunes like Rodeo, but really, so I believed in the project. He really came through he came through with that expectation, but added the layer of beauty. I had no idea that it would turn out so beautiful. And when we started, I began to worry, like, okay, these holes are going to be really good, but will the retail golfer be able to appreciate them without the beauty? And they're some of the most beautiful holes on the property. So he delivered that. Bless his heart. I think it's not only a very good golf course, it's so beautiful. What evolved were the last 3 holes. So it was a 9 hole golf course. And we were that the peninsula that sticks out in the 40-acre lake was where we were going to build like a small Scottish hamlet. And we'd been planning this in 2 dimensions on paper all winter, and it all looked great. And what was delaying that project was an argument I was having with my team about how much of the tip of that peninsula should be a putting course. And I kept on saying, we're golf first. It's got to be, this big size, and they want to make it smaller. So we argued about that. And in the meantime, we started digging the lake. And then it wasn't quite spring. I went out there, let's say March, and I stood on what's now the 10th tee. And I thought they should have taken that while they had it, because we're not going to build a village here. This is golf. Uh, this is all golf. Those holes sort of route themselves, but what Jim did with them was so brilliant. I mean, that 10th hole, yeah, I mean, it's just a spectacular golf hole. And it adds so much beauty playing in that. So yeah, I don't know if that's what you meant by grew, but the project grew, I think, in terms of it got better and better and more beautiful, but it also went from 9 holes to 12 holes. And so much of the course, I would send Jimmy, images of like the approach to the Cardinal hole at Prestwick, or the 13th fairway at Prestwick, which is wild, and and photos from different places I'd been. But Prestwick has, in that the original routing, some wild fairways. Um, North Barrack 2 and 17, some wild fairways. Um, so while my mind was on Prestwick one day, I remembered the original routing there, because I had played it, and it was a day where the members, they mowed out the old greens, and they're going to play, for those people who don't know, the first 6 to 12 Open Championships were played on a 12-hole golf course at Prestwick. And so I'd studied the old routing, and I was like, this is interesting. And I added it up, and not only was Prestwick 12 holes, it was the same par. I want to say it's 45, whatever it is, and one par five, same number of par threes, and the same spread of distances. The par fours were on the shorter side. The first hole was a very long par five that played from, I mean, the right of the current 14th fairway to the 16th green. It was like 600 yards. Young Tom Morris The first time he won the championship on a 600-yard hole, made a three. Uh, our first hole is the only par five. So there were a lot of really similar accident. There were a lot of accidental similarities, and we think that's a really cool. If it was good enough for, you know, the Morris family and those amazing champions, we figured it's good enough for us here at Sand Valley.
Al, I know that we want to get into some of the other exciting projects in different locations. You touched on them earlier, but one last thing from me, going back to the Lido. The original Lido that was built in New York, out on Long Island, when it came to technology in terms of golf course design, what C.B. McDonald and Seth Rayner accomplished was considered maybe the greatest technological achievement, a feat of engineering in at least the first half of the 20th century. With what you've done with Lido and your team, maybe this is the greatest technological achievement of the first half of the 21st century. At what point did you finally have the confidence this is going to work? This Greek recreation, this GPS mapping thing is going to get every detail right. And are you amazed still that you pulled it off?
Well, I mean, this says maybe something about me is I uh, tend to be pretty decisive and maybe jump into projects before I should. Right? And then the architects keep saving my rear. Uh, sandbox, totally flat site. Is that pretty cool turnout. Commons, flat site. So I was overly confident to start, and then like Sedge and Commons had a slight panic, like, gosh, some people call this the greatest golf course in the world at the time. We could almost only fail by definition, right? Like you can't go beyond that. So to answer your question, started off with a lot of confidence. Sand site, great team. Then sort of wondered, was this boneheaded, to do? I mean, my dad, when he was looking at it, ultimately decided not to do it. This isn't worth it. I'm not going to do that. Urged me not to do it in Wisconsin. Right. And I'm thinking, man, maybe I should have listened. He's a pretty wise man. So when did so confidence, lost confidence, but then when these holes started coming together, it was, I don't know when it was, but it was pretty early on, reestablish that confidence. And it just keeps growing. I mean, it's sort of a mesmerizing course that has me completely captivated as a golfer who plays it. So I don't know when that came back. I didn't lose it for long, but they somehow came through. All of them, Tom, Ryan, Peter Flory, Brian Zager brought Peter's technology into this GPS software language that allowed it to happen. So it must have been when some of those first wild fairways we'd done the bulk work. And then when some of those details were put in, when I saw the second green, Tom didn't make a lot of edits to that green. So that's sort of what was first put in by the dozer. Then it was like, oh yeah, this is really cool scale golf. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that was the path.
Sure. Yeah. And the Lido is kind of a semi-private model. It's a private club like the UK, but there is some access for resort guests, day of the week, based
Yeah.
on availability kind of thing. Folks, I'm just telling you, whatever you need to do to be able to play the Lido, it is absolutely worth jumping through a hoop or two when you book your stay to try to make that happen. It's just phenomenal. It's mind blowing, really, to get that all right. And the level of challenge is so different from, say, Mammoth. Um, Noticing, Mammoth was designed to just wow with a strategy, but especially friendliness.
Yeah.
And And the Lido is just an absolutely amazing test in addition to this technological achievement. US Mid Amateur coming in 2026.
That's right.
And I think the cast of characters is just going to be amazed.
I hope so. I agree with you. I feel like I could say that because it was designed by, somebody besides us. And it's just so engaging. It's exhausting mentally because you have to commit to every single shot. There's not a chip that you can just sort of land here or 6 feet past it. There are huge consequences to making the wrong decisions. So you have to be committed to every pitch, every approach, but it rewards that thought. So it's so rewarding to play, and it's so wide, and the greens are so enormous that it's such a dynamic course, and that every day it plays so differently. Each green has 60 permutations of how you could play it. So I knew you. I figured you'd appreciate it, Joe. You've seen all the best courses in the world, and I'm happy that you had that experience. And I would echo what you were saying. People could try it. Should at least see for themselves if they like it.
Yeah, you talk about the effort of committing out there too. There's always also just like your head's on a swivel because you turn around and sometimes there are several times we'd be out there, we hit a shot and like, well, someone in the group would go like, "Oh, nice shot," and the caddies would go,
Yeah.
you
The
just
ball stops rolling.
you just
Right, the
don't know, and then
ball's still
like
rolling.
you
Yeah.
get to where you're going, you're just kind of looking around like, "Wow, look at that!" Like, and then you see a different angle of another hole because everything's just sort of
Yeah.
um,
It can be
out there
it
for
can
the
be
viewing.
overwhelming the first few times, and I think it has a lot of similarities with the old course, but it really helps to see it, several times. So uh,
Absolutely. I played with three great guys from Portland yesterday. Uh, Eric, Jesse, and Peter that do a couple trips every year. And being they're from Portland, they do Bandon Dunes a lot. But it was the funniest thing with the caddies where one of those guys would hit what looked like a pretty good drive. And it is the same thing at the old course at St. Andrews. Oh, dead silence from the caddy. The other, oh, nice hit. And the guy's shaking his head, like, yeah, you have to think about not just where you're placing the drive, but how it's going to roll out and where it's going to finish. That, is a great player's golf course. So, a lot of fun to experience that in that regard.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you.
What would you say? I missed that.
Oh, I'm saying I'm glad you had it. Were able to have that experience. I know.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. And but yeah, as we transition into the next thing, um, the commons, it's going to be fun to get people's reactions to some of those holes. I love that first par five, where you've got the mountain, mountain of sand as a backdrop there from all that you dug up out of that to build Lake Luna. And then yeah, the tenth hole, you're looking at it and you're like, okay, if I don't hit it on the green, like where can I hit it? Because it's so the visuals of the bunkering and hiding the slivers of fairway that are there, but it just looks like, what am I supposed to do here? Like the risk seems like the best play
I
almost.
drove it by it this morning, and it's just like, I mean, there's so much fairway on that hole, but exactly what you said on the tee, it's like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, it's
Yeah.
all so hidden, and you have to just trust it, that there's space out there, but it's an intimidating tee shot for a, 300-yard hole with a 70-yard wide fairway for the most part. Like, how is this so terrifying?
Yeah. And a great pretty severe Redan 11th par 3 on the lake there too. So a nice finish that came together when you went from 9 to 12 holes there. So Jimmy Craig is involved, and what we originally thought we would see the Jimmy Craig course maybe first at Rodeo Dunes in Colorado, 45-minute drive from the Denver airport. But now we have the first course there is Corin Crenshaw design that a lot of people are now starting to become familiar with. There's a recent preview trip. So several of our comrades in the media went on. Joe and I didn't go, but what can you tell us about Rodeo Dunes and the experience that's developing there?
I can tell you it's gonna be different than anything that most people have seen in this country. Since the first time I saw it, it really reminded me of Ireland, sort of Western Ireland, that the size and scale and the choppiness of the dunes feels very Irish. And we've been in a drought for 5 years, but that first year is also sort of emerald green, and that helps. Um, so it's a spectacular site, varied, throughout or within each routing, but then I think every golf course we'll find has a different scale to it. So it's a wonderful piece of ground. Bill's routing is big and bold and brawny, and it finishes with six of the most exciting inland holes that I've ever seen. So it's exciting. It's big. There's bold movements. Very different than that Scottish scale course. Or commons that we were talking about. A lot of people have said it looks so different from um, the other courses that Bill and Ben have built. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But Bill and I were up at Cool Links walking, and it was the first time I'd seen Cool Links. And in our second application, we proposed that we don't shape any of the fairways, we mow them in, and we just shape 5 hectares of greens and tees. And we get to the second hole, and it's again this wild, brawny upper plateau fairway, lower raised green. And I said, Bill, I don't want you to take this the wrong way because I think he knows what a super fan I am. But I said, a lot of your golf courses they're just perfectly balanced. Everything is so perfectly balanced. I've always described them as like one of those Calder sculpture aerials that if you hung them, the bunkers by a string, it would just balance perfectly. And and I said, this is not balanced. It's off kilter, right? It's just sort of like, but Bill, it's so spectacular. I think it might be the best hole in Scotland, right? And I should be careful, saying things like that because, this probably has 1,000 of the best holes in the world. But I was blown away. And after that, and his routing was, I thought, done at that point. And after that trip, the routing changed a lot. And one of the questions I asked him when we started shaping it is, what if we imagined that like Scotland, we couldn't shape, we couldn't cut down and melt away or fill up. And what if our default was just to leave it as it is, right? Now we do have dozers and that can come to our benefit, but that became the default. And Bill's so positive. He's such a yes and person. He'd make a great improv, artist. So he and John Hawker ran with that, and we tended to just leave things, where they were. And I think that leads to a golf course that feels old worldly. It feels like it would fit in these old, Irish links. It doesn't feel like a resort course and it doesn't feel modern. It feels so old. And I'm just blown away by that. I love that old feel. And there was so much pressure on Bill because it was such a good site and he felt it. So he was just relentless in the number of trips he took out there over the last 4 years. I mean, at least 150 days. And his days are twice as long as anybody else's day. He's sun up to sunrise. So he squeezed everything he could out of it. John Hawker, Ben Crenshaw as well. But I'm just so happy with what they created. That again, I had very high expectations and they exceeded them with, 18 totally distinct, exciting holes. I just love it. Just love it.
What's the timeline on that one for people to look out for?
We're going to sell public tee times starting this February. We're going to offer tee times for 2027 for public play. Our founders who finance our projects are going to begin playing preview rounds next year. I really want, traditionally we'd had all these preview years. Joe's been a part of those for 25 years. And that's one thing, my dad does differently that we have followed. You get people out there early and I really want this course to be totally dialed in, right? I want that fescue to be firm and fast for the edges and roughs to bleed out before we share it with the public. I think it deserves to play the way that Bill and Ben and John want it to play. So we took 4 years to build it. We're just going to take another year to dial it in. In the past, we would have opened a course like this in May. We're going to give it an extra year to just get it completely dialed in. So people are going to have to keep waiting a little longer, but we start selling tea times in February. So stay tuned. I think they're going to sell out pretty quick.
Sounds great. And yeah, that Jimmy Craig, his design will follow at some point after that. Um, Anything else there? I was just going to ask Michael just the um, connectivity with the rodeo and the Survey family out there. How
Yeah, I mean the Survey fit. My partner Mike died in March. He was 85 years old. His family had been out there in the grasslands for 140 years, right? Um, and they've been ranchers for 140 years. He got into the rodeo business when he was a kid and started this rodeo company that his two sons took over when they were in high school and college and have really grown tremendously in terms of the size, but also just the quality of these shows. So again, we lean into local, right? And we want them to feel included and to be a part of this. It's literally in their backyard. They all live on the property on, a compound. Um, and Want to tell their story. We want to tell the story of ranchers, we want to tell the story of the American West, um, and the grit it takes, to do what families like the Surveys have done for generations. Um, so they put on the Houston Rodeo sells 2.1 million tickets. The rodeo is a big business. They have 900 horses, on their ranch. Um, this was a very meaningful rodeo in the professional world, the last one before the Super Bowl in Vegas in December, real points. But it was our founders and friends and the Survey team, very intimate, right beside the first tee of Bill and Ben's course. And it was one of the coolest experiences, you know,
man,
that I've ever been a part of. That I
yeah,
thought they knocked it out of the park. And when they let all the horses out of the ring to gallop toward the setting sun in the Rockies, I saw people, some golfers, some not, who were crying. It was just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
yeah,
It's great.
remarkable. Joe, anything else there before we talk quickly about the other two properties we know about, and then let Michael on his way.
Yeah, one quick question, Michael, to immerse yourself in that local culture, did you try your own hand at rodeo?
No, no,
Oh yeah,
no. I have way too much respect for what these athletes do, and have I'd seen a rodeo of theirs before, and no, and I could say, Joe, I will never try my. I mean, it would
You
really
heard
be. It'd be fun to try some of the roping things and fail,
it.
but these bucking horses and bulls, no, no.
All right. You heard it here first,
I
folks.
do. I do like teasing people and making them think that we're going to pull them out of the crowd to try it. Okay. No, it's sort of like Olympic long jump. When I first moved here, there's a big Norwegian community and a long jump in town, and they said you should come try it. And I gave them a similar look, like you just offer that out to the public. You think I'm going to go, fly? No, thank you.
All
well,
right,
and
Al, back to you.
yeah,
Yep.
in East Texas, there's also another property developing, Wild Spring Dunes. Uh, just reading this now, the proximity to Shreveport, where my wife grew up, that would
Oh,
be
she
a good
did.
excuse for us to get back to
Yeah,
Shreveport.
yeah.
Uh, but Wild Spring Dunes, looking like what the Tom Doak course being developed there. What can you tell us here? And not far behind, really, in terms of when we're
It,
going to see
it,
this.
it's wild for me because I've been working on this is my seventh year at Rodeo Dunes, and Texas came to me not too long ago, and 18 holes will open before rodeo. Part of that is because Texas is so easy to build. A large part of it is also because we sod the golf course. I've never sodded a golf course, and you lay the sod, and 3 weeks later, it's this lush turf you could play on. So we're going to start preview play this fall, early winter on an 8-hole loop, and then all 18 holes are opening in probably late May, and then some of the resort amenities the following or that fall of next year. So the golf course, the turf is done. Now we'll dial in the out of play areas and begin to starve the grass next year. But it's done, and it's so bizarre to be out there, looking at holes in the sand, and then to come back a few weeks later and have a hole that looks like you can play golf on it. It's sort of surreal to me. But the course is done. We've made comparisons to parts of the property that are like, in the center, sort of like Pinehurst, to the south, these big sweeping Pine Valley like, movements, and it plays through and over this ravine that reminds me of Shore Acres. And of course, I've played a lot. So it's an exciting routing. And Brian Slonick, and so, was the lead on it. And the other Renaissance guys just knocked it out of the park. And I think Tom told me it exceeded his expectations, and he had pretty high expectations for it. So, it'll be fun to see how our guests compare Wild Spring to Rodeo, two very different pieces of land and golf courses, both very exciting and dramatic. And I can't wait to see, which one different people prefer.
Absolutely. That makes for an exciting couple of years you got coming here, as those will just be sort of in tandem, uh,
Yeah.
giving people something new.
It's exciting. There's a lot going on. I mean, we're planning more courses at Sand Valley, so we haven't stopped here at Sand Valley. We got more coming in next couple of years. Hopefully we start Jimmy Craig's next course at Rodeo next summer. We've begun clearing. Bill and Ben have our second routing at Wild Spring. We've just started clearing that and working on that. So we're gonna try not to stop here. And Angela Moser is down in Florida now. She's been there for a couple of weeks, starting work at Old Shores, which is our site, just north of Panama City in the Panhandle. So we'll begin building that course this winter. And Brian Schneider has an incredible act, I think, to follow it. So no looking back, full steam ahead. We've got an extraordinary team now and a great relationship with these brilliant architects, and we hope we could just keep on going.
That's really exciting. People probably know Angela's name from her work with Tom at Pinehurst number 10. So, next big thing for her. I was talking to somebody after Sand Valley. I was like, I mean, they could build like 20 golf courses out here, and that would be a realistic thing. And, I wasn't even half kidding about that. There's just so much land there. Um,
So much sand, so much great land. Yeah, well, we're going to go one at a time, but as long as people keep coming back, we're just going to keep building. And, you know, as as we create variety, as we grow, I think we could cater to different types of golfers. If you have 20 courses, no golfer is going to play all 20 on the group among those. So if they're going to play four, five, six, we could have courses that cater to different types of golfers. And I think that's what you'll see in the future at Sand Valley, that we will now come up with sort of specialist courses for different demographics of golfers.
wow. Joe, anything else for Michael before he heads out?
No, I mean, 15 years ago, I asked your father how many projects were in his future, and he famously responded, "I'm going to keep building courses until I run out of money." I love the fact that you have held faithful to building golf courses that the public can play. And that's probably the greatest gift that your family gave to golf. So all I can say is keep up the good work. Uh, hopefully, you will not run out of money and will not run out of great ideas or great sites because, as Sand Valley proved to me again over these last couple of days, uh, it this is how golf should be, and the walking, the camaraderie, the shot variety, all those things that you take and say, "I had a great time." And that's what you should walk away with a round of golf.
Well, thank you, Joe. I hope you guys don't wait a year to come back. I hope I see you guys back out here in the spring, and it'll be fun to hit some shots together on Lido and Commons. But really appreciate that, and we're gonna keep building. Certainly don't want to run out of money, but we're gonna keep going.
Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be plenty of reasons for business trips of ours to head back that direction. So
We hope so. We
look
like
forward to
seeing
that.
you guys, and we want to keep giving you opportunities to come back.
All
So
right. Thanks, Michael. We look forward to what's to come. Appreciate your time today and hope we can do this again soon.
so nice seeing you both, and appreciate the conversation. Have a great day.
Cool.
You too.
Thank you.